for tuning into another edition of Another Dolphins podcast. We are at the most slow part of the offseason, but news keeps trickling in. The Miami Dolphins signed a safety. We are here to answer your questions. But before that, I cannot bury the lead. Joshua Houtz is joining me. What's up, dude?
How's it going, man? I'm glad that we have stuff we can come on here and talk about during this 7-week hiatus that we have, and that we're not the Jets, right? We're seeing Hassan Reddick not showing up. We don't even know what Aaron Rodgers is doing, so it feels good to just sit back and know that we are in that state where we can just chill for now. But yeah, we got some stuff to talk about, man. How have you been?
I'm counting my blessings. I mean, Josh, you hit the nail on the head there. Aaron Rodgers isn't in camp for the Jets. You have Hassan Reddick, somebody they traded for, someone they willingly traded for. He ain't showing up. He's not talking to the head coach. And then you have the Miami Dolphins, a team where Tua's looking for a new contract, Tyreek's looking for a new contract, Javon Holland is looking for a new contract, and Jalen Phillips is probably right on their tail. And Josh, do you remember what Miami's attendance was during their mandatory minicamp?
100%, right, Jake?
Crazy how that works. And we got a lot to get into today's show, the Dolphins side of safety. But Josh, two quarterbacks, Superflex Dynasty League. I traded for basically throughout the offseason. I've gotten myself Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor to go behind Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford. I feel a little queasy about it, but God, man, I don't know how you could be comfortable as a Jets fan right now, just seeing that your entire season's in the hands of Aaron Rodgers, someone who's barely played football in the last 2 years, and he's not even, shown up to the mini camps, man. That just seems crazy.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, hopefully there's more going on behind it. I mean, I can't say hopefully because it's the Jets. I hope all the disarray in the world, but you would think that a coach and a quarterback were having some sort of communication that he would have known that he wasn't going to be there. But it's Aaron Rodgers. So again, glad it's not us. And if you're a Jets fan, you should absolutely be queasy. That queasy meter should be way up there. Mark Sanchez butt fumble. That's how far up that queasy meter should be right now.
So I'm going to try something a little different on our show. I know most of our listeners are just that, they're listeners. So I put together a little PowerPoint here, a little bit of the visual aspect. If you're listening to the show on 560 WQAM on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. So this can go one of two ways, Josh. I think, hey, maybe this will be a nice visual to add to our presentations. And then there's also the, hey, look at Jake. He created his second grade history PowerPoint. That's super cool. So let's dive into it. And of course, it would not be Another Dolphins podcast if we did not let you know that we are giving away a copy of College Football 25. How to enter, simply send a Dolphins or a football-related question to AnotherDolphinsPodcast at gmail.com. It's right there up on the screen for you. You get 2 additional entries if you include a screenshot of you reviewing our show on any platform. Pretty simple way to get 3 invites. We'll announce the winner of that on July 7th, so don't worry, everyone will have enough time to go pre-order the game on their own or whatever it may be. We're looking forward to that. And Josh, today we're going to go through a lot of the questions that we've been getting. Don't worry, we actually got some in today, so you won't see those in this episode, but we'll have them in another. What have we learned about College Football 25 lately, Josh? Is there any new developments kind of trickling out?
Yeah, I mean, they're starting to show a little bit of stuff. I think there's still a lot of information fans want to hear, but it does sound like it's completely revamped. It sounds like it's not going to be a Madden reskin like I know I was at least worried about. And it does sound like a lot of the focus is on the Dynasty mode, which I know that's, the heart and soul of those games. So it sounds like everything's good, but as we know, let's temper expectations until we see it. But that wear and tear system, like I think you mentioned on a previous podcast, some of the other things they're implementing, I'm more stoked for NCAA than I am the Madden. And as a diehard Miami Dolphins fan, that just pains me a little bit to say.
And we bridge the gap here on Another Dolphins podcast. Joshua Houtz is a PlayStation dude. I'm an Xbox dude. And basically this entire podcast is a study that shows that, hey, we can all get along.
Yeah, and don't forget, we need to play Rocket League. I'm pretty sure this is that down period, and we need something to do till NCAA gets here. So there we go. Perfect.
I'm so excited for that, man. I have so many Rocket League clips just ready just whenever we want to throw some stuff out there. That'd be so much fun. Yeah, so, hey, find me on Xbox. Don't use this against me if we've played games and we've yelled at each other. But, yeah, Samsung Juke, if you want to add me, we'll play some Rocket League. We'll have some fun. But, Joshua Houtz, we got some news. It was something that we kind of expected the Dolphins to do. We looked at that depth chart and thought to ourselves, man, they got to do something at safety. You have Javon Holland, a top-tier safety for sure. You signed Jordan Poyer, who was flirting with Miami in the past, but considering it was only a 1-year, $2 million deal, considering Nick Needham's, going back and forth between slot, corner, and safety, we had a pretty strong feeling that this was a position the Dolphins weren't done at.
Yeah, it was absolutely no brainer. And I think heading into the year, if you were the Dolphins, ideally you would have liked to have brought back a Brandon Jones or Deshaun Elliott, but they were way out of that price range. So we know we talked about the Jordan Poyer signing, 31 years old, 32, we round that age. This signing right here is a very similar number, Jake. So I don't even want to talk about long term because the more I think about Javon Holland not being under contract in that safety position, we won't even get into that. But they signed a safety that has some experience. And as we're talking about the Jets' disarray and their misery, he played for the Jets. So many of us may remember him from that butt fumble, as you have that beautiful picture right there. Or not the butt fumble, the butt interception. Yeah, it was a terrible throw and a poor attempt by the unicorn. So, yeah, I'm excited for this. But again, I do not know what's going to happen past, the Marcus Mays. What are your thoughts, Jake? Initial thought was obviously they were going to bring a safety in at some point, right?
And we all wanted Justin Simmons. I don't think anyone in the fan base is lying. That was kind of, we were all walking in the same direction there. But there were some obvious signs that that might not happen. Number one being, going to be kind of expensive. And if you look ahead to next year, the Dolphins are already $15 million over the salary cap. So whatever the Dolphins were going to do, and this wasn't actually announced yet, but it's hard to assume this Marcus Maye deal not being just a 1 year deal, right? It's hard to imagine that the Dolphins are dealing with multi-year contracts this late in the offseason. But a former second round pick, the New York Jets, he spent 5 seasons in New York playing 60 games. He signed a 3-year contract with the Saints in 2022, only played 2 years on that deal. He finished 2023 on injured reserve due to a shoulder injury, and he also served a 3-game suspension for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy. Josh, you mentioned his age, right above 30. This seems like an opportunity where Chris Grier said, all right, this is a player who has struggled to stay on the field at times. Come prove it. We have a 2 starters in Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer, where you don't have to come in and start all 16 games. That's something May hasn't really done lately. But what he can do is come in and be an absolute thumper. And I think that's kind of what we were hoping the Dolphins would get at safety.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what we were hoping they'd get at safety. I mean, that's kind of what we had in a Brandon Jones that we like so
Yep.
much, right? The way he come down in that box. You mentioned all the accolades for Marcus Maye. We do have to touch on. I think Omar Kelly tweeted out, but he was voted the Jets defensive MVP, I think, in 2020. So again, at one point, this guy was a pretty decent safety. You mentioned him being a thumper. He did play, decently in the box as well at free safety, at least based on Pro Football Focus numbers. But this is a guy who, as you all saw, right, there was a clip going around of him from last season, I think, trailing the receiver almost perfectly, running the route basically for him. So he does still have some talent. He is going to be that, Anthony Weaver's defense needs a third safety, right, Jake? That's my voice. This is their third safety. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the versatility that the Dolphins do have and what's up Anthony Weaver's sleeve. So we knew the veteran presence was coming, and we can't leave out that he said, I think he chose the Dolphins because he gave him the best chance to be a Super Bowl contender or to compete for a Super Bowl. So inject that straight into my veins.
Do you want me to share the part that nobody's saying?
Share it, please.
The other team that was interested in Marcus Maye?
I have no idea.
It was the Tennessee Titans. So at least we're better than the Tennessee Titans. That's what it's so much fun to say.
But we're not. But we're not.
Damn, dude. Damn.
We lost to the dude that puts mayo in his coffee.
Wow, and we always go back to that. But I just thought it was funny. It's like, we're joining the Dolphins because we want to win a Super Bowl. It's like, all right, well, what other Super Bowl contenders are we talking to? The Titans. But no, like, in all serious, man, this is somebody who, too, speaks to the leadership the Dolphins are trying to really develop in this locker room, right? Instead of taking some shots on some acorns, they have some undrafted guys, drafted a safety in the 6th round. But when you mention a team captain in 2020, a team leader on the defense, I mean, that had an alarm going off in my bed. Just the Dolphins, it seems like they're really focused on getting those guys who have been in the league for a while. And, it goes back to maybe the biggest issue with the Dolphins. We're hoping that these guys have that experience. They're ready for the big lights of that December, January football where the Dolphins have struggled in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what a lot of these guys bring. Even some of these older rookies that they brought in, right, have that experience. They're team captains. I do have written down that a third of his 3,000 plus snaps throughout his career came in the box. So again, this is a guy who comes down, becomes a factor in the run game, and can cover some of those tight ends, can do some of those things. Even played a little bit of slot. So intrigued's all I can say. I love how you have the references there, man. Like, if you guys, you need to go check us out on YouTube. Like, Jake is Jake's got it down. We're not getting sued for. I shouldn't say that. We're going to get sued for something, but we're not getting sued for this one.
What do you think the Dolphins are going to do here? One of the things I love to go back and look at, man, if you remember, I don't know if you remember this, Josh, but the Baltimore Ravens and Miami Dolphins played in 2022, and it was one of the most exciting games of the year, the 21-point comeback in the fourth quarter. What people forget is Kyle Hamilton, the safety that everybody has ranted and raved about for the last year or so, rightfully so. He was the guy getting beat in those plays when the Miami Dolphins played the Baltimore Ravens 2 years ago. He actually was inactive for the game when they played last year. But what I'm trying to get at is this Anthony Weaver, this Baltimore Ravens defense, they do love to get those safeties out in coverage. How do you line up these three guys if you have a Marcus Maye, a Jordan Poyer, and a Javon Holland out there, and maybe like a dime defense where you're maybe pulling off a linebacker for a cornerback, a member of the secondary, someone a little faster?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Javon Holland has the best range, right? We've seen that time and time again. So I think he's the guy kind of playing more of a free safety role. And then I think you just kind of rotate between the Jordan Poyer and Marcus Maye. I think Jordan Poyer is probably better in coverage, more of a free safety. But what they're bringing in Marcus Maye kind of just reminds me of, like, again, the players that we lost, right? A Brandon Jones, a Sean Elliott, kind of those molds. We're getting a guy who's 31, has the experience. And let's be honest, Maye is probably at a different spot as far as skill set as those guys were mentioning. So I want to see what he has left in the tank, and I want to see his contract because, like you said, Jake, we all wanted Justin Simmons, we all wanted some of these other guys, but this Marcus Maye contract is probably going to look like peanuts compared to them, and you can't be upset about that. Just like the Jordan Poyer one, when you're comparing that to what they almost gave him last year, it's just absolutely hilarious and just goes. It's a testament to what Mike McDaniel's building here.
1 year, $2 million, man. That is so insane for somebody who was a team captain in each of the last 4 years, like Jordan Poyer. I don't know how they're necessarily going to use these three, and I think that's kind of the point. When I saw the Jordan Poyer edition, the one thing that stuck out to me, and if you haven't listened to it, we did a book club on him a couple of weeks ago. Go check that out. Fun player to explore for sure. He played 419 snaps in the box last year as like that pseudo linebacker safety. And looking at that Baltimore Ravens defense, I think there were some clips going around last year, man, where they were kind of just like running around in a circle in the secondary, just giving a different look before the snap. And it really seems like the Dolphins are focused on, we got to slow down running backs. We have to slow down tight ends. I think my least favorite stat from all of last year is you look at Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. They combined for 4 interceptions last year, and they all came against the Raiders and the Patriots, two of arguably the worst offenses in the league. I think what they're doing with safeties here and adding this depth, getting different guys who can do different things on the field, they're trying to make it harder to tell what the Dolphins are trying to do on defense. They're trying to make it so you think that throwing in Jalen Ramsey's direction, wherever he's lined up on the field, which is something the Dolphins plan on doing, you'll take that fight, and there will be bait where the Dolphins can take advantage of something like that. So I don't know if we can initially sit here and say, like, this is exactly what the Dolphins are going to do, because it's nice to see that they're adding so many guys with flexibility and can do a bunch of different things. Josh, I have story here by CBS Sports where it just kind of breaks through how often or how many total snaps different members of the Baltimore Ravens defense played at different positions. So I'm going to give you 3 guys, and I want you to try to label what the Miami Dolphins are going to do for each of them. So Kyle Hamilton, who I just mentioned, he played 22% of his snaps in the box last year, 30% at free safety, 43% in the slot. And then you have Geno Stone, 13% of his snaps in the box, 71% at free safety, 11% in the slot. And then Marcus Williams only played 7 games, but those numbers too. 18% in the box, 64% at free safety, and 16% the slot. So you had those 2 guys who are really dedicated to being that free safety, where you had Kyle Hamilton really, I wouldn't say split down the middle, designated slot guy in the box, free safety, all over the place. Where would you try to put those 3 guys if they were, these 3 guys on the Dolphins?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the 3 out of those that I think has the most versatility and I think I would trust more would probably be Javon Holland. Again, back in college, I think he sat out his COVID year it was, so we kind of didn't really have a lot of information on him. I know I wasn't even really studying him, but what he played a lot, his last season in college was in slot. So I think he'd probably be that Kyle Hamilton, so to speak. And then you let the other 2 guys do their thing. I think the most intriguing thing, and you mentioned him kind of in passing, was Jalen Ramsey. I mean, the fact that Anthony Weaver's going to utilize him the way they should, so where these guys line up could all be dictated by him. I mean, Jalen Ramsey can do a lot of these things. He could line up at safety too. So, like you mentioned, man, it's a great problem to have, not knowing where these guys are going to line up. But if it was me, I think Javon Holland would be that Kyle Hamilton. And that's kind of a testament as to why we need to lock him up real quick, right? Because if he goes out there and flourishes in this system, by God Almighty, man, that's a big contract on top of all the other big contracts.
And the Dolphins strictly added another dude, Marcus Maye. I mean, Josh, to simplify things as much as possible, he kind of has that Deshaun Elliott in him, that Louis Delmas in him. He has that Rashad Jones where he's just going to go out there and smack people. And I really like that for this Dolphins defense. Overall, good signing. I'm really at the point where I think the Dolphins shouldn't go crazy in free agency. We actually just got a tweet where Cat's face was photoshopped looking at Calais Campbell, which I thought was pretty awesome to see. That's maybe the one other name I have on my radar for the Dolphins to add. But Josh, off the top of your mind, is there any other positions where you're like, oh, something has to happen here? Because I think free safety or safety in general was kind of obvious, but you could make a debate elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we all kind of think that there could be moves still at the interior offensive line. I mean, I keep joking that maybe, or not joking, hoping that Connor Williams can come back healthy, but it sounds like that's probably not going to happen. So would like some interior offensive line help. And then on the other side, right, defensive tackle, we're still wondering who's going to take Christian Wilkins' place. I don't know if you saw it, Jake, but apparently there's a report that Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins are in the locker room for the Raiders before even the coaches. So they got a hell of a dog, man. We're still trying to figure out which dog is going to line up next to Steelers. So I think those two positions on the interior would be my big two. But I would love to see Calais Campbell come here because he owes us, like I said before, for what he did to Ryan Tannehill. He owes us for that.
Let's transition now. We are going to get into some listener questions. And if you would like to get in on this action here, just send us a question on AnotherDolphinsPodcast@gmail.com. Again, we got some questions in today, so my apologies if your question isn't included. We'll be doing this again. Thank you for helping us with the content. We appreciate that. So, Josh, for our first question, it actually comes from Joshua, who says, "What's up, Josh and Jake? I live in Dubai and from Alabama. I'm a huge Dolphins fan and a huge fan of your podcast." That warms my heart every time. Here's my question. What do you expect of Tua this year? Will he stay healthy again, or do you think he will compete for MVP again? What are the overs and unders for his pass yards that you guys expect? There are still haters, but he proved he can remain healthy and be elite. But can he take over this season? What do y'all think? Josh, I don't know if I want to get into the business of the over and unders because when you consider that Tua led the league in passing yards last year, there's obviously going to be some regression. But considering the passing off options this team has, man, I'd hang up and listen if this would be another year where he'd set a new career high in passing yards. Where I will hand it to you, Josh, is I do think that there's a herd of Dolphin fans, I think I'm in them, who's at least a little concerned, like, hey, Tua's losing this weight, and we were all under this impression that Tua's weight helped him stay healthy, and now he's losing that weight. So I feel like we should be a little concerned.
I mean, I really can't answer that. That's kind of how I keep wondering and what I'm thinking deep down inside because Tua in his camp, it sounds like, based on what they're saying is he learned how to fall based on the jiu-jitsu, based on some of the stuff last season where he doesn't necessarily need that extra weight. And now he's going to be more mobile and, who knows what that's going to open up in his game. So I think the biggest thing that a lot of us have done is, overlook the injury factor just because he did play that one healthy season. So I'm not ready to say that. As for over under on yards, I wrote down 4,500 right away. I went back and looked at 4,624 last year. So he will be taking a step back in yards, but I think maybe he gets a 30 touchdowns. That was the one little number I wrote down. He gets 30 touchdowns. And he can absolutely still go for the MVP, right? I mean, he was in the contention for that until we honestly, as a team, fell apart late in the year. So I want to say him stay healthy. And, honestly, if he can stay healthy, all those other things will probably fall in place. So that's my answer, Jake. What do you think? Awesome. I'm really excited, though, that we have a fan from Dubai. And I did want to know, Josh, reach out to us. Let Joshua reach out to us and let us know. When does a Josh become a Joshua? Because I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, at what point in my life do I start calling myself Joshua? Like, Jake, when do you become a Jacob?
I actually evolved from a Jacob. I was a Jacob growing up, and then I like, you know what? We're cutting it short here to Jake. I like what you said about the 30 touchdowns, and I think that makes a lot of sense. When you look at what Raheem Mostert did last year, his 18 rushing touchdowns, a franchise record, is certainly not something I'm trying to discredit here, but the Dolphins did a really good job in the red zone of opening up those running lanes and giving Mostert some easy, inside the 5, bringing into the touchdown type situations. You wonder with the additions of Odell Beckham Jr., the additions of, I think I'm ready to start banging the drum, Josh, of Jonnu Smith just being an absolute stud this year, maybe like a top 12 fantasy tight end this year. When you have those guys in the mix, you do wonder if, 29 touchdowns he had last year? If you do wonder, 5, 6, Mostert had 18 rushing touchdowns last year. You could realistically say he has 8 rushing touchdowns. That's a good year. And Tua has 10 more passing touchdowns. I don't think that's absolutely insane, where we'd be feeling pretty good and he'd be right there in that MVP race. So I do think the path is possible, but it's going to be frustrating for Dolphin fans. And this is something we got to work on together. Whatever happens September through November matters oh so much. But once December hits, it doesn't matter anymore. So don't get me wrong. Those games matter. It's going to position us to be ready to strike for the playoffs. But until they do it in December or January, you're not going to hear the national media. You're not going to hear even the Dolphins reporters say anything other than you got to get it done. You got to get it done. You got to get it done there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're all at this point. We mentioned the 29 touchdowns. He had 14 interceptions, and just from I think like 1 or 2 games I watched yesterday, he threw some of those in the red zone. Whether it was his fault or the receiver. So right there could have been that 30th touchdown. So yeah, we'll see. Again, I think a lot of it goes towards the health, and it's going to be interesting, right? Because for as explosive that offense looked last season, a lot of these defenses, those 31 other teams, their goal heading into the year was probably to stop the Miami Dolphins and that type of offense, right? So interesting chess match early on for sure.
Part of this organizational thing is I don't know what to necessarily do when we have multiple questions about the same topic. Tanner, I want to get you your shine here. He's always been a long-time listener, long-time supporter, and we greatly appreciate the interest in the podcast. He said, can everyone shut up about Tua's weight? I don't think there's ever been this much fuss about a quarterback's body, and you can tell from his most recent press availability that he's fed up with it. What do you guys think of this? The one thing that I think we need to start saying about Tua is that he is always fed up when speaking to the media. There's so many pictures of him in press conferences looking so annoyed. And I think it's just, hey, he's a very personal person. We remember he declined to be on the Netflix quarterback show. And I think just that's the way he is. But we're in June. He was meeting with the media about June 4th. You can't win and lose football games. And if your quarterback's sitting there with that sharp jawline right in front of you, you gotta ask him about it. You gotta.
Yeah, and when a lot of the narrative last year was that you're putting on the weight also to maintain your health, and now you have to have those questions on what'll come of it. I mean, you mentioned a jawline, Jake. If he didn't shave at the same time, that might have changed a lot too, right? If he kept that, and he does have amazing hair. Another thing I want to say is he was a new father, right? And as a new father, as a guy who, once was a few pounds lighter than I am now, that does play a factor. So maybe he was there eating some scraps that the kid and the mom didn't want. And, that's where some of those pounds came. So he trimmed it off. I'm not concerned. But as we talked about in the first Tua question, I still can't say that the lingering health concerns don't make me a little bit queasy. And losing that weight's definitely going to add to that.
And I think this is something we should probably celebrate because it's another offseason where Tua's working to get better. Man, I loved Tyreek Hill's quote where he said, like, you're paying these guys as an investment. You're not paying for them for the last 3 years. You're not paying him because the Dolphins have gone 4 straight seasons without a losing record. You're paying for him to hopefully, for the love of God, win that first playoff game in 24 years. So when you see, hey, in 2022, you see him speaking to the media saying, God, I thought I sucked. I thought I was awful at football. You saw that confidence come back and turn into a leader. 2023, he gets the health in line, plays all 17 games, plays 18 games considering the playoff game. And this season, it's the mobility. I can't wait to see what it looks like because you saw that mobility. I go back to that Ravens game. Dude, that spin move for one of those touchdowns in the fourth quarter, I think it was to Waddle. I think he even actually had a nice spin move on a touchdown to Craycraft as well. Those are the things you want from quarterbacks. Like, how many years in a row did we see Ryan Tannehill come out and do the same thing, looking like that baby deer in a headlights and then running like a baby deer? Like, we see Tua getting better and we want more from him, and I think everybody can agree with that, but the fact he's improving every year is a sign that you should be feeling pretty good. Like, hey, we're paying the right guy who's going to hopefully every year, whether it's Madden grades going up 2 points, whatever it may be, just slowly getting better.
Yeah, and part of that's probably why Tua is in this. I mean, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but why there is talks between the two sides, right? Why Tua might want to get paid a little bit more because every year he is, changing. He's almost like a chameleon. Whatever's thrown his way, he seems to adapt. Whether it's gaining weight, whether it's an endless cycle of different offensive coordinators. This year he's taken up with John Beck, so. It's what you want out of your franchise quarterback. I just hope, and I have written down jokingly that if they're going to implement some of those, his legs, he was a dual threat, I think number one coming out of high school. Let's open up that RG3 playbook, Jake. What do you say? Run this thing till the wheels fall. I'm just kidding. Protect Tua at all costs.
Dude, give me like a week 17 naked bootleg from the 5-yard line, and I will go ballistic. Tua Tagovailoa had 0% of his fantasy points last year come via rushing. Give me the dude. So, little tangent here. The Dolphins used to host a thing called Web Weekend. And we used to go, and I remember it was 2014. Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback, and they had like a show before the show, before games, and I forgot the players they had on the panel, but I remember 2014. It was the year after Peyton Manning went absolutely ballistic with the Broncos, and when that passing attack was on, there was a couple plays where he would do the naked bootleg. Old ass Peyton Manning would be doing a naked bootleg from the 5-yard line, and I was like, God, like, can we try something like that with Tannehill? Like with how much they struggle and everything like that. And I was told that it's not in Tannehill's repertoire, but it is for 38-year-old Peyton Manning. And people forget that Ryan Tannehill was a wide receiver in college. So it was one of those things where it was like it just seemed out of place, even though it made sense. God, seeing Tua not do it every play, not doing it in week 1, week 2, week 3, but give me like a week 17, maybe quarterback sneak when it's like, I don't know, 2nd and 1, and all of a sudden he's running free for 45 yards. Dude, I would go ballistic. I would love that so much. And we've already seen him truck Jets players. So, I mean, why not?
Yeah, we've seen him truck Jets players, and every time the Patriots fans, we always love to throw Tua 6-0 against them. They throw out then Tua's stats. Tua's not that good. A lot of them forget. I think Tua has like 3 rushing touchdowns against them. So let him do those little sneaks. Let him do those naked boots, like you said. I remember Marino doing the same thing. I mean, he was no, it was no mobile quarterback either. So yeah, that was frustrating. That was frustrating with Ryan Tannehill. He kind of reminded me of a Jake Plummer, and that was that kind of had that little bit of a bootleg-ish type feel to him. So how you don't use that when you have a wide receiver at quarterback, I don't know. But for those that don't know, Ryan Tannehill did play wide receiver in college.
This one comes from Nick. Much is made of the evolution of team building and rookie contracts to create contenders and so on. I heard recently the stat that only 3 current quarterbacks have made it to the Super Bowl after their big contract kicked in. I'm a big believer in what the team is and QB are doing. My question, finally, do you think Tua will be able to be a team-carrying QB the way Mahomes, Stafford, I think the third quarterback was Rodgers maybe, were with less money spent on the rest of the team? This is the $50 million question for Chris Greer. Josh, I think roster construction isn't an awkward point, but I don't like thinking that this is the only way to build a roster, right? You can go back and you do look at the years where the Patrick Mahomes run it on a rookie deal. Patrick Mahomes is winning it on a massive deal. So, like, if we go through this thought process, that means Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Jared Goff are never going to win a Super Bowl. Jared Goff has made it to 2 conference games and a Super Bowl. I think we have to stop looking at it less as a Super Bowl and maybe lower that bar slightly, because only one team can win the Super Bowl. It is so hard to win the Super Bowl. If you have those Super Bowl aspirations and you're a team like that's a top 1 or 2 seed, I think this is going to sound like loser talk. I think all bets should be off once you get to the conference round because, man, so many different things can happen in one football game, let alone 2. I think if you can reach that conference championship with a quarterback on any contract, you're building a team in the right direction. That'd kind of be my logic. If you can build and develop a roster to the point where you're competing in that championship game, you're good. Are the Dolphins headed that way? Absolutely. But you need to win that playoff game, and until they do that, there's questions in the air.
Yeah, and I don't know that necessarily we will ever see Tua Tagovailoa have to elevate, a team and put them on their back like we may have seen with Patrick Mahomes even had Travis Kelce. A lot of these guys still have somebody to throw to. I mean, we can see what the Dolphins do, right? They don't put as much, focus on the offensive line. They're getting those skill players on the outside. They're going to give Tua his paycheck. So I don't know if he's ever going to need to elevate them. If you see what the Dolphins built to get us to where we are, right? We have what, 3, 4 back-to-back winning seasons, yay, or whatever it is, Jake. Maybe we'll finally win a playoff game, but you see what the Dolphins need, and this is the offense. So I don't know that Tua Tagovailoa will ever be, picking someone up on his back Hodor style and carrying them, elevating, the Lynn Bowden Juniors and Isaiah Fords into Jalen Waddles and Tyreek Hills. But I hope he never has to do that. So let's say Tua Tagovailoa win a Super Bowl. If that was the question, and I went on an entirely different tangent, yeah, sure, we're gonna win a Super Bowl with Tua Tagovailoa, but I don't even know we'll ever see a playoff win again, Jake, because I'm just that down and out, down bad.
Yesterday, I did a radio interview with 96.3 WJJB, the Big Jab, and dude, I got asked the hardest question. If the Dolphins don't make the playoffs this year, or they don't win, let's just say they don't win that playoff game again, how do you have the Mike McDaniel conversation? I think you I think he's still the guy, but like there should be a legitimate like gripe if 3 straight years you get so close and you can't win that playoff game. You got to have discussions, right? Again, I'm not trying to say I'd fire him, but I mean, dude, that all of a sudden, like he was saying, like that becomes a hard conversation. You consider Flores a coach you got rid of after back-to-back winning seasons. You already jumped boat once. Could you really see Stephen Ross saying farewell to McDaniel like in that situation?
I mean, I don't. He always wanted his young Don Shula, right? He kind of got him in this aspect, but Jake, I always go back to just feeling so safe and secure and loved by Brian Flores. And then you just reminding me, we said the same thing about Gase, and then boom, just like that, Brian Flores is gone. So anything could happen. If we don't make the playoffs this year, then definitely the hard questions have to come. But hopefully we don't even have to talk about that, Jake. But again, like you mentioned earlier, it's all going to come down to the late half of the season. And it kind of sucks that we can't just sim to those tough games that, really matter most.
It does suck, but at the same time, man, the 45 points hanging up on Washington, those are the fun ones. We haven't always had party weeks as Dolphin fans, and it's nice now where you're facing the Raiders, you're facing Washington, and these are probably famous last words by me, but it's nice you could have these party weeks where everything's going oh so well. You still get the Jets twice, party weeks.
Yeah, that was definitely a kiss of death. We'll stop talking in absolutes. I guess my theory was we're simming the season and we're going to win all those games in that simulation. So injuries are turned off, and I don't know if that would even happen. So we're not simming.
I like the way you think. I believe this is the last question. And no, sorry, we have 2 more questions here. And then this one's from David. I believe that one of the challenges that the Dolphins seem to face in the upcoming months is having an abundance of talent that might lead to solid depth players being released before the roster gets down to 53. Even though it might still be way too early to make such predictions, here's my question. What player or players do you sense the team will have to release when putting together the final 53 that you believe will be claimed quickest despite our potential desire to get them to the practice squad? Josh, I was, shampooing my hair in the shower this morning, and I just envisioned Taj Washington trying to make it to the Dolphins practice squad like a baby turtle trying to make it to the sea where all these seagulls or all these predators are coming in and trying to eat them. I feel like that would be a near impossible ask to get Taj Washington to the practice squad. And that's the first player I went to considering Mike McDaniel's offense, how much they love players who can catch, run, block, everything that makes a wide receiver so important. It seems like any guy who gets released from Miami, I mean, you have Chase Claypool as the number 1 wide receiver in Buffalo now. I feel like we're at a point where Mike McDaniel, his superpower is these wide receivers and getting them to shine, where I think if Taj goes, if a crazy thing happens where they don't think Malik's a fit, if any of those guys, those are the first that came to my mind where I'd be signaling like, oh man, they ain't going to make it to that practice squad.
Yeah, man. I think I don't know if we're getting too hyped over Taj Washington. If we are, I can blame myself. That was the first person I thought of too, which is losing a Taj Washington. I even wrote down maybe Braxton Berrios. I don't think he's going to go anywhere based on the new special teams agenda and the changes in the rules there. But who knows? And then some of the other positions I had running back written down. I don't know your thoughts on that. I don't know why I had Jeff Wilson written down. I think his cap hits pretty high. I just don't know if that's someone that Mike McDaniel would end up cutting, and then Salvon Ahmed again is a guy who could had written down. So those were guys that I could see finding a home, right? I think Myles Gaskin's in Minnesota, and to me, Salvon Ahmed and Myles Gaskin are similar players, ironically enough. So any other positions you had, Jake? I had Tyndall circled too. Like that would break my heart watching him get cut. Even Katz hyped up and said that he might stick around. If I were to lose Channing Tyndall this year and see him land on somebody else's roster, that'd probably hurt a little bit.
Grayson Murphy, undrafted free agent from UCLA, is one that comes to my mind. I already see him But guys, PFF said he had the most pressures in all of college football, or he was like top 3 or something like that. And that's probably the one that sticks out to me where I could see fans getting really riled up. It does seem, Josh, every year it's 2, 3 undrafted free agents. Everyone's like, oh my God, how did we let them go? But something to keep in mind with Miami's initial 53-man roster too is they're going to sign other teams' players too, right? They're going to fill out the roster. Maybe somebody's going to get cut elsewhere that they're going to try to scoop up. So that's something to keep in mind too as you're considering. Like if the Dolphins are going to keep 53, it might be a healthier exercise to maybe try to get it to 49 because they're going to maybe add a couple other players elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's the best thing. I mean, we're seeing it with the Marcus Maye sign. We see it with some of those signs throughout this year, and just the history of Chris Greer. They leave no stone unturned. So I also had edge written down. You mentioned Grayson Murphy. Who knows what edge they could lose as well, but that's also another position I'd be keeping an eye on.
I don't see anything insane happening. Like, I don't know, a Mo Camara. I don't necessarily see that happening. Maybe like No, I don't. The Dolphins are at a tough spot where I think it might have been easier a year or two ago. Maybe an offensive lineman, maybe like you'd like to get like a Lester Cotton, maybe a Keon Smith on the practice squad, and they're unavailable. But they think the Dolphins. I mean, there are a lot of tough position battles. Maybe a defensive tackle if a Tier Tart doesn't stick or something like that. But we'll have to see. And I've been trying to stall Josh because the last question I've been trying to think of an answer to this one, and it's from our good friend Kevin Nogle at the Finsider, who we both write for. And Joshua, are dolphins mammals or fish? I don't know, man. I've been struggling with this one all day.
I mean, I think the answer is mammal, right? But I always thought they were fish. I think the appropriate answer is mammal. I really don't know.
The appropriate answer is mammal. The only time I think I like to use mammal is when Bills fans say, yeah, we're going to squish the fish. Where you can hit them with
the fish. Yeah.
Well, actually, they're mammals. That is probably the best answer I could think of for that one. I couldn't go too much deeper. Yes, they are mammals, but yeah, dude, yes, don't squish the fish. We need the fish. But that is it, Joshua. I really enjoy doing these Q&A sessions. They're a lot of fun. I really like engaging with our audience. The Dolphins don't begin training camp for another month and a half or so. So we're going to keep going with our book clubs. We got the giveaway coming out, so be sure to send us some questions. Joshua, I'm going to put you on the spot. We've had a great pod. This has been a blast. What are you thinking for the next book club?
Oh, man, you definitely put me on the spot with this one. Damn. Let's do. Should we try to? Can we do a group? Can we try to figure out who that defensive tackle is next to Zach Sealer? Would that be crazy? Is that too much? Can we narrow that down?
I'd like to do. If we do that, I think we should do a group. Maybe the 2 or 3 man rotation. We can look at what Baltimore did with their guys, because I think what the Dolphins are really going to lean into is one anchor, quote unquote, defensive tackle that's on the field all the time.
Jordan Brooks, there's a better answer. Let's do that. Jordan Brooks and what he brings to the linebacking unit. How about that?
Deal, man. Deal. And we're doing another linebacker after Jordan Poyer. The Dolphins are just loading with these guys. I'm super excited to see how they battle with the different running backs and tight ends. Dude, week 1 against the Jags, Evan Ingram, I think he was a top 5 fantasy football tight end last year. And then you have Travis Etienne. So, I mean, that's going to be such a great litmus test week 1. But that is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. It's a blast chatting with y'all. We will be back soon with another episode. But until then, fins up.
Fins up.